Hello everybody. Today we're going to review Manjaro Linux. Manjaro is a Arch-based Linux distribution. It is based on Arch Linux. I've been hearing a lot of really good things about Manjaro, but I've never actually used Manjaro. I've used mainline Arch Linux before. I've installed a few other Arch-based Linux distributions over the years, and I enjoy Arch. Even though I run Ubuntu primarily on my home desktop and my laptop, I do enjoy playing around in Arch Linux. I'm going to open up the distro watch page for Manjaro Linux because again I don't know much about it, so let's read a little bit about it. Now, if you notice in the distro watch rankings, Manjaro is currently ranked number 3 in their page hit rankings, so Manjaro's definitely gained a lot of momentum in the past few years. And I'm going to go to the Manjaro homepage just to get a little more information about Manjaro. It is a user-friendly Linux distribution based on independently developed Arch operating system. It uses a rolling release development model, which is the same model that mainline Arch Linux uses. What is a rolling release? A rolling release means there are no point releases like you have in, say, Ubuntu and Fedora, and where every 6 months or every 9 months you have to completely update your system to the next version of Ubuntu, Fedora, Linux Mint, what have you. A rolling release model has no next version. All the packages on your systems are always constantly being updated. So there's no, once or twice a year you have to completely, back up everything and update your system. Everything is constantly updated, which has its benefits, also has its drawbacks. Rolling release model is definitely less stable than, say, a long-term support release or a stable distro like Ubuntu's long-term support release or Debian's stable release. You run the risk of having more breakages with a rolling release model, but the trade-off is you always have the freshest packages, you always have the most up-to-date software, and you never have that situation where, say, running the Ubuntu LTS, you have to update your Ubuntu system every 2 years, and it's a major update. You really need to back up everything on your computer because you run the very real risk of breaking things on a major upgrade like that, where this rolling release model is, a minor upgrade every day. So to get the ISO file to install Manjaro Linux, you go to the manjaro.org homepage. We'll go to the download tab at the top of the page, and the download page lists the Manjaro XFCE edition, which I am told is their flagship product. The XFCE edition is the Manjaro edition to get if you're not sure which one to get. That is the one that Manjaro considers their flagship desktop environment. They also offer a KDE edition, a GNOME edition, and the Manjaro Architect ISO, which I'm assuming is a more minimalist installer, probably an Incursus installer, and lets you really customize exactly what you want installed on the system. So that's more for advanced users there. What I've already done, I've already downloaded the Manjaro KDE edition. That is the one we're going to look at today. So let's get started. Okay, so I've got the Manjaro KDE edition. I downloaded the ISO file, and I have loaded up a virtual box. This is a virtual machine. I will be installing Manjaro KDE inside VirtualBox rather than on my actual physical machine. My physical machine, again, is running the LTS release of Ubuntu, and I don't want to wipe that out for purposes of making a video. So we'll be doing this inside VirtualBox. And VirtualBox wants to capture my mouse. So, the first thing you see when you load up the installation is you have this menu, and this is my first time looking at it, so please bear with me, but it looks like the first selection on the menu is a time setting, 208 UTC. TZ equals UTC is the second thing in the menu here. I'm sure that's setting time zones. I'm not going to bother with that. The next is keyboard layout, key table equals US. Basically, it's setting my keyboard as a US keyboard. The next setting is language settings. It looks like it's already selected English US, so that's fine. The driver setting. Now, the driver setting is something I might want to change. Right now, it looks like it is set for free drivers. That is the open source drivers. I'm sure if I hit enter here, it would offer me the ability to use the non-free proprietary drivers, and that is exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to choose non-free here. And now, drivers, non-free, is an option. The next option on the menu is to actually boot into the Manjaro KDE live environment. Further down the list, you have a help option, the memtest option to run memtest. The last option is, of course, just rebooting your machine. I'm going to go ahead and boot into the live environment just to make sure everything works in the live environment. After all, if the live environment doesn't work all that well, then we probably shouldn't bother installing Manjaro to begin with. It's going to take a few seconds to load up. And boot up times in these virtual machines always take a little more time than they do on physical hardware, so it's not anything that's an issue with Manjaro or with any of the software installed on Manjaro. It's just VirtualBox just takes a little time. Okay. Looks like we're finally about to boot into the desktop environment, in this case KDE. And we got the desktop background finally loads up. We still haven't got all the taskbars and everything loaded up yet, so we wait. Again, when we actually have this installed, it's not going to take nearly as long. Alright, and it looks like it is finally through booting, and looks like we're greeted with this Manjaro Hello greeter here, which is really nifty. It comes with a lot of links to important stuff like documentation, such as the README, the release info for this current release of Manjaro, a link to their wiki, the Manjaro wiki. You have support links to their forums, their chat room, mailing lists. You have links to how to get involved with the Manjaro project, a link for development, and a link to donate in case you want to donate to the project. So that's really neat. And then, of course, at the bottom here you have this launch installer. And since everything, kind of booted up well here in the live environment, I'm not going to waste time playing around in the live environment. I really want to install this, so let's go ahead and launch the installer. Okay, so the installer comes up. The first thing we are greeted with here is a language selection. It's already chosen English United States for me. That's correct, so I'm just going to click Next. America for the time zone, New York. I'm actually in the Central Time Zone. New York is in the Eastern Time Zone here in America, so I need to choose a different city. I know Chicago is in the Central Time Zone, so I'm just going to pick Chicago. Next. Keyboard layout. It has already selected English US for the keyboard layout. Now it does come with this field here to type some things just to test out to make sure your keyboard is working. Obviously, if you don't see the characters that you're actually typing here, then chances are this keyboard setting is not correct, but in my case it is set to the correct setting, English US. And then the next page in the installer is partitioning. Now, since we're in a virtual machine, I don't have to do much with partitioning. I'm going to basically give Manjaro the entire disk inside this virtual machine. Obviously, if you're dual booting, say dual booting alongside with Windows, you may have to do some partitioning. Here, it's pretty simple for me. I'm going to give it the entire 15 gigs of virtual space I have here. So I'm going to choose Erase Disk. And by default, it is going to give Manjaro the entire disk when it installs. It's going to give it all 15 gigs of hard drive space. I'm going to click Next. It is going to ask me for a username. Keep things simple. I'm just going to go with Manjaro. It's something that I'll be able to remember if I just choose the distro name. It's going to ask me for a password. I'm going to give it a really simple password here, since again this is just a virtual machine. This is not my physical machine. Then it has the option to log in automatically without asking for a password. I don't recommend you do this, people. It only takes a second to type in a password, and just for security reasons, unless you know you are the only person that's ever going to physically have access to that machine, you should require it to have a password. You also have the option of using the same password for your user account and for the administrator account. Yeah, I'm fine with that, so I can check that. If I didn't want to check that, though, we would just type in a different password for the administrator account, but I'm just going to use the same. Click Next, and then we've come to this review page. Just review all the settings we've already made. Location looks right, keyboard looks right, the partition looks right. So we just click Next and the installation should start. And the installation has started, and I'm not exactly sure how long this installation is going to take. As I said, I'm new to Manjaro. I've never installed it, never used it before, so I'm pretty excited to check it out. But installation times on Linux distros can vary from just a few minutes to sometimes up to an hour or more. So I may pause this video and come back after this installation has completed. Okay, looks like it is finished installing. Now that was actually pretty quick. I did pause the recording and stepped away for a few minutes, but it might have been 10 minutes for an install, maybe 10 minutes. It was really fast for a Linux install. As I said, most Linux installs, even the really fast ones, I know Ubuntu's install is super fast. For an install that includes a full desktop environment, such as this one. This includes the KDE desktop environment. To get an install down to 10 minutes or even 15 minutes, you get under 15 minutes, that is a pretty quick install for a complete operating system. So very impressed with the install there. So looks like we have the option here to restart now, or just click Done. If we click Done, we're still going to be in this live environment here. I guess we could still test things out, but why would you want to test things out when you've already installed the operating system? So we really need to click Restart here. And that really shouldn't even be an option. I mean, they should make that more prominent. So Manjaro team, you might want to do something about that, because that could be frustrating to people that just finished installing the system and they don't know to click that restart now. If you just click Done here, you're going to be still stuck in the live environment. So make sure you click Restart Now, Done, And now the system will reboot. Now this rebooted back into the install screen because I still have the install ISO mounted inside the virtual box here, inside the virtual machine. I need to go into my virtual box settings here, and I need to go to storage, and I need to take that ISO file and get rid of it, which I cannot do while it's running, so I'm actually going to have to shut down here. Okay guys, we're back. I'm sorry about that. I had to go ahead and shut down that virtual machine because while it was running I can't unmount that ISO, so I had to shut it down and then go into the settings here in VirtualBox under storage, and then I had to get rid of the ISO which was still mounted here. So I apologize for that, but now we're back up and running, and now we've rebooted and we come to the login manager here. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and this is our actual installed Manjaro KDE, and let's just see how long the desktop environment takes to load. Now that we've actually run through the installation process, one thing I will mention while we wait a few seconds for the KDE desktop environment to load is I really like the default background they've chosen. The wallpaper is really slick looking. It's not bad. I'm kind of digging it. I probably wouldn't change it out if I was running this. I'd probably stick with the default wallpaper for a little while. Okay, so KDE has loaded up, and it looks like in the installed version of Manjaro Linux we still get the Manjaro Hello Greeter linked to all the information from before. So that's actually pretty cool. I like that. I like having that. I like distros that have little greeters like this pop up with relevant information on support forums and wiki information and such. I think that really helps out the new user. So big plus for Manjaro for having this greeter and for having it automatically launch at startup. Now for more advanced users, as you get more familiar with Manjaro, you probably don't want this loading up every time you log in. So I'm going to go to this launcher here at the bottom, and I'm going to slide it off to where it does not launch at start, and then I'm going to close the Manjaro Hello Greeter here. Alright, now that we are inside our freshly installed Manjaro KDE Edition, well, let's go ahead and just look around. I think for this review what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the KDE menu and just show you all the programs that are installed by default. After all, I think that's probably the easiest way to get a good overview of what Manjaro KDE is all about. So I'm going to go to the bottom left here to the application launcher, and I'm going to scroll over to applications, and I'm just going to go through each of these categories. Under development, you have a bunch of development programs, a bunch of Qt programs. This is for app developers. This is not something that the average Linux user is going to be interested in, so I'm just going to back out of that. You have an education category, which has math and science subcategories. Looks like LibreOffice Math is in the math category and the science category. So LibreOffice Math is the only education program installed by default. Under games, you have Steam is installed by default. Now that is really nice. I love the fact that they have included Steam by default. I think that's a big plus. I wish more distributions installed Steam by default, because if you're going to game at all on Linux, you have to have Steam installed. There's just no getting around it. So big plus on that. Graphics, we got a few things installed. Under graphics you have Krita, the digital painting application. You've got Ocular, which is KDE's document viewer. You have LibreOffice Draw. You have Scanlight, which is a scanning program. GwenView, which is KDE's image viewer. And you have Inkscape, which is a very popular vector graphics editor. One thing I can't help but notice is missing from this graphics category is GIMP. After all, if you're going to install so many programs, especially things like Inkscape, the graphics vector graphics editor, I really think you probably should install GIMP by default too. I think Manjaro may have dropped the ball on that. I think most people would like to have GIMP installed by default too. So under graphics we have Internet. Internet, we have a BitTorrent client, which is QBitTorrent. We have KGit, which is the download manager. We have Conversation, which is KDE's IRC client. We have Thunderbird Mail, which these days most people I think use webmail, so that's actually one I think the Manjaro team could have left out for a default installation. I think 80, maybe 90% of Linux desktop users probably use webmail, so Thunderbird Mail probably won't get used by most people that install this. KNet Attach, the network folder wizard. Steam also appears under Internet, just as it did under Games. And then the web browser, they installed Firefox by default, which is great. Firefox is fantastic. Multimedia. K3B, disk burning. Now, for Linux disk burning software, K3B is the gold standard. It is the best disk burning application that runs natively under Linux. So I love K3B. VLC is the media player that's installed. VLC is awesome. Cantata is the music player client. They have some Qt stuff here. Kdenlive video editor. Kdenlive is a great program too. Under Office, it looks like we have the entire LibreOffice suite. So they've been installed LibreOffice Base, Draw, Math, Impress, Calc, and Writer. I think that's fine. I think most people that install LibreOffice end up installing the entire LibreOffice suite anyway, so including the entire LibreOffice suite by default. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Good job on that, Manjaro. Under Settings, we have the usual suspects: system settings, print settings. Under Utilities, we're going to have Kate, which is the text editor in KDE, Arc, which is their archiving tool, you know, the zip and unzip tool, Cleopatra, which is the certificate manager and unified crypto GUI, whatever that happens to be, FileFlight, which is disk usage stats, Kfind, which finds files and folders, the Manjaro user guide, which looks like it is a PDF file. Again, good job, Manjaro. I love that they included a PDF file of documentation for beginners, and it's accessible right here in the menu for any new Linux users or any new Manjaro users that have questions or concerns. So big plus including that. You have the HP Device Manager, which is for HP printers, KCalc, which is a scientific calculator. You have a screenshot utility, another text editor, KWrite. Then you have the SUSE Studio Image Writer, which is a USB key writer. So that's applications. I'm going to go back to the Favorites tab here, and I'm going to go into System Settings. Let's play around with some of the system settings. Let's see what kind of configurations we can do in KDE. I actually don't get to mess around in KDE too often. I usually prefer more minimal desktop environments. I'm actually running OpenBox right now while I run this virtual machine on my Ubuntu system. I also like tiling window managers like Xmonad and Awesome. So full desktop environments I don't run too often. Occasionally I'll load up Unity on my laptop that runs Ubuntu, but I very rarely play around in straight GNOME 3 or in KDE in this case. So under the system settings we have hardware configuration, kernel, keyboard settings, language packages, locale, time and date, user accounts. Under appearance we have workspace theme. You know what, just for fun, let's play around with the theme. Okay, looks like by default the theme we're looking at is called the breath theme, which I gotta be honest, I really like. Let me go ahead and just open up Dolphin File Manager here so we can see more of the theme. I mean, this is really sharp looking. I love the theme of these windows. I love the icon theme too. Really, really, really slick looking. I mean, this is just very modern looking. I really would not want to change it, but you know what? Just for fun, let's change it. Let's choose the Breeze theme. Click Apply. And see what the Breeze theme is all about. It looks fine too. I think I like the Breath theme better. Let's see how the Dark Breeze theme looks. Oh yeah, that's very nice too. But you know what? I'm gonna go back to the Breath theme. I really like the default theme that was installed. So. And you have the desktop theme here. I guess this is for the widgets. KDE has a lot of widgets. I don't have any on the desktop right now, so I'm not going to fool with that. I'm going to go back to the main system settings menu here. Under icons, we have a few different icon sets installed by default. The breath icon set, which again I really liked, so I probably wouldn't want to change this, but if you wanted to, you have the Breeze icon set, you have the GNOME icon set, the Oxygen icon set, which most KDE fans are familiar with. It's been around forever. And let's see. Continuing on with system settings, you have system settings for desktop behavior, window management, startup and shutdown. This I'm sure includes options for auto start programs, you know, programs you want to launch automatically on startup, such as that Manjaro Hello greeter we saw earlier. I'm sure that's listed under startup and shutdown. Personalization settings such as account details, regional settings, and so on. You have some accessibility options here for those with disabilities running Manjaro. Network, you have network connections and settings and Bluetooth settings. So that is the system settings here. All in all, I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen so far with just a few minutes of installation and a few minutes of spending time in the KDE desktop environment here installed on Manjaro Linux. I think I'm going to keep it installed in this virtual machine for a while. I think I'm going to keep it up to date, at least for a few weeks, maybe a few months. Keep the system up to date. I'm going to keep updating it, play around in it, at least a few minutes every week, just to see how things go, see if I experience any hiccups, any breakages at all. We didn't even discuss package management. So for package management, I believe their default graphical software installer is called Octopi. I'm just going to type in the menu here, software, and see what comes up. Yeah, it is Octopi. Octopi is the add and remove software program. Excuse me, can't talk today. And it kind of reminds me of the old Synaptic package manager from way back in the day. Not too many people use Synaptic anymore, but it does come with this graphical way of add and removing software, so that's cool. Of course, you can use the terminal. I'm sure Manjaro uses the Pacman package manager, the same package manager that Arch Linux mainline Arch uses. Matter of fact, just to test it out, I'm going to go ahead and run a command here in Pacman, sudo pacman syu, give it my password, and it already wants to update a few things. Anyway, I'm not going to follow that too closely, but yeah, it does, use Pacman, which is a great package manager. So that's one of the main benefits of using Arch Linux. Pacman is just a fantastic package manager. if you don't mind using a terminal-based package manager. So all in all, what do I think about Manjaro Linux? I give it a thumbs up. That installer was just super simple, super fast. The actual installed Manjaro Linux, this KDE edition anyway, super slick, very polished look. Even inside VirtualBox, it actually runs pretty smooth. I mean, not a lot of graphical hiccups. And VirtualBox usually runs like a dog. I mean, this, again, on a actual hardware, this would be a lot smoother, but this is actually not bad for a full KDE desktop environment running inside a virtual machine. You know, this is pretty good here. So again, I'm going to run it for a little while. I'm going to keep it up to date, and may keep in touch with the Manjaro community. Check out their forums and mailing lists. You know, and again, I may check back in a few weeks or maybe even some months down the road, and you know, see if my opinion has changed at all. Peace.